Hello and welcome to Northwest Firesides Chat's second show. I'm Leslie, along with my co-host Kirsten. We do want to thank you for being here, and I do hope you enjoy the show. If you're catching us on the replay, thank you for watching. Just a quick reminder, if you're watching us live and you want to ask any questions, you're going to need to give StreamYard permission to see your Facebook comment. Otherwise, we won't be able to see your name in the post, and there's a link at the top of the group page, so just click on it to allow permissions. And one other little bit of information here. If you see me looking around a lot and stuff, I've got to kind of control what's going on with the banners and any graphics that we've got. So it's not that I'm uninterested. It's just that I'm working two jobs. Right, Kirsten? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're the pilot.
Yes.
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, you're the pilot. You're driving. I'm just looking for directions and chipping at you which way to turn. So
there you go. And we got you working,
which is ironic because I'm sitting in my car. Yeah, I was just gonna say, if anybody noticed, I'm sitting in my car because we have throttled my internet connection on my phone, my data. So I am war driving a little bit here at the Starbucks parking lot where I live. And but I did buy a drink from them, so I didn't really steal services technically.
Good girl. Yeah, and with that all in mind, we're probably going to have to cut down to about once a month, like when her data plan rolls over, because this whole process really sucks the data.
It does. I could probably just keep doing this. I don't mind. If people don't mind me sitting in my car and dealing with my shifty eyes as I look around for people, that if they're okay with that, I'm okay with that.
I don't know. Hey, how do you feel about that, folks? Let's just do a car rant.
Here we go.
Perfect for a car rant.
There's plenty. I have plenty to rant about, as you know. So
yes, we got on about what 45 minutes early, just so we could get the chatties out of us.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know that it works because we'll chat for like another 3 hours if left, unstructured.
To our own devices. Yeah, that's why we have notes, so we can try to stay on track.
Trying to stay on track. So yeah.
So probably gonna cut this down to once a month for a while until we can see what's going on and how we can get over some of the spottiness of the connection issues.
Right. The dynamics of broadcasting from the country, which is funny because I'm really not that far out. I don't live in the middle of nowhere. It just feels like it at times. So.
Yeah, well, Pam is saying, the road rants are fine with me, and Kate's saying, do it.
Do it. All right. Awesome. Well, today, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing, or should I just get right into it?
I'll tell you what, let's get right into it since we don't know exactly, what can happen on your end.
Right.
So let's try to go.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just break right into it because you just never know what's going to happen. So we're talking about kind of prepper beginnings, how we're gonna get started. So probably if you're here, you're already on the path to getting more prepared, or you've been on it for a while. But for those people that are just starting out, it can be extremely overwhelming to think about where you're at and where you need to be, or sometimes what you see on TV where you need to be, and it can just be absolutely overwhelming. And even if you're an experienced prepper, you always want to go through where you're at and kind of reassess things, make sure you're on the right path, maybe get some new ideas. So hopefully we'll tick all those boxes for everybody a little bit today and get folks thinking about preparedness from the very beginning. But the first thing that we wanted to talk about was determining your threat. And the easiest way to think about starting prepping is what is most likely to occur in the situation where you are right now. Where I'm at in the Pacific Northwest, I don't really have to worry about hurricanes. So I don't prep for hurricanes specifically, but I do have other threats that I worry about. So when I started prepping, I thought, what is it that I really might have to deal with? A house fire, a financial problem, wildfires, flooding, Blizzards is not something that typically happens, but we might get snowed in for a day or two because folks in Western Oregon cannot drive in the snow. So it just depends on where you're at. So think regionally when you want to start prepping. What are the biggest natural disasters? What are the things that are most likely to occur? And just start from there, because as you start prepping in general, you're going to find that there's a lot of carryover or crossover in your preps that will be good for a variety of situations. So identify what it is that you're prepping for first, and then look at your resources with where you are first. A lot of times you could take a tub and a checklist and go through your house and amass the things that you already have that will put you more prepared just having it in one spot.
One thing I do want to touch on real quick before we move too far away from that, like you said, that, we don't really have to worry about hurricanes, and earthquakes are not just a West Coast problem.
Yes.
Per the USGS, this is a map of, earthquake potential zones. And if you'll notice there in the mid-eastern part, there's a little bit of red in there. And that's something, it hasn't really happened a lot, but the potential is there. And earthquake is something that, there's very few spaces in the U.S. where it is not a threat at all. But if you're in those regions and you weren't familiar with this, please be aware that earthquake is something that can happen in your region.
Right. And structurally speaking, your area might not even be remotely ready for something like that because it's not typically on the radar.
Yeah. And then psychologically, it's one of those things that you don't know it's coming. It just hits. And I remember my very first earthquake. It's something that will never, ever leave me. Now it's kind of, we got an earthquake. We'll get through this. But the first time, it's like the lights go out. I was in bed and my bed had wheels. It ended up in the middle of the room. Yeah. And it was...
Your bed had wheels.
Yes. It was kind of like the I Love Lucy episode where they're in a hotel and they're near a train track and it keeps rolling back and forth. That was exactly it. But
I was just imagining the intro to the Monkees. You remember the show, The Monkees, and they're rolling the bed? Okay, sorry, we digress.
Absolutely, but it's loud. It makes weird noises. If it's dark and you have lights on, the lights are probably going to go out. It's probably one of the most terrifying things that, it made such an impression in my head. So if you're not from an earthquake prone area, maybe read up on it a little bit. I am, formulating documents for all emergency types, but we will have, drought and earthquake is complete and we will have those up as well. So it's something, if you're not really in an earthquake prone area, you might want to read up on it a little bit.
We're going to have that blog, the earthquake and the drought one, loaded up on the website hopefully soon, a snippet of it, and then some of it will be over in our Patreon as well. So we'll be doing that, getting those up and going. But yeah, you're right. It's a bit alarming. I think we were discussing that the other day. Are you talking about the same event that we chatted about the other day? How I felt it up here in Oregon?
No, that was my very first earthquake when I was like 7. The Northridge quake, I was actually at work. I was doing executive protection, and I think it was like 3:00-ish or something in the morning. It was really, really early.
Right.
And we had VIPs from out of state, and they had never experienced an earthquake before, and they got hit with, I think Northridge ended up being like a 6.3, something like that. Good size. And we were 45 miles from the epicenter, and it was brutal. It was definitely brutal. Oh, I think you stalled out a little bit there. Are you coming back?
Yeah, I think maybe somebody might be using their extra bandwidth Starbucks.
Uh-oh. Go buy another coffee.
Am I still... Yeah, exactly. No, that's terrifying. I remember that one. Here I was all the way up in Oregon, and like I said, it was shaking my walls and room. Yeah, it was crazy.
That amazed me.
Tornado, hurricane. Don't Yeah, it was crazy. It was just everything was shaking on the walls. It was insane. It woke me up. So, I mean, that's very powerful. Well, with
Mhm.
flattened freeways, so overpasses collapsed on top of each other, and it was terrible. Um, so, so think about what you've got in your area: the tornado, the hurricane. Financial preparedness is important for everyone.
Mhm.
So if you just plan on the loss of a job or something that financially happens, an injury, something that takes you out of it where you maybe can't go and buy groceries for a month, 2 months, 3 months, having a surplus of first aid supplies and food and things of that nature will help you financially in times where you just don't have the resources. And I probably hear that more often than any other time, where people are saying, I'm so glad I was prepared because we fell on hard times and I've had to dig into my preps for the last year. And they know that they're going to have to build all that back up again, but that's why we have all of that. So the financial is probably one of the biggest. Financial, political unrest is another reason. A lot of folks from other countries will do prepping because of political unrest as well. It's like so small I can't read it.
Adrian just chimed in and said we had an earthquake in Georgia back in Valentine's Day in 2014,
Oh,
pretty intense for a 4.4. And that's
yeah,
exactly the point. 4.4, we sleep through those on the West Coast. Not
yeah,
minimizing what you were going through, but that
right,
does illustrate how intensely shocking they can be.
right,
So
right.
good point, Adrian. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Hi, Adrian.
yeah, you folks need to really kind of think about the potential for that and what it's like.
Right. Yeah. Flooding, fires, political unrest, house fires. We were just talking about how not all fires are going to be wildland fires or forest fires. They can actually be your house burning down. We've had several preppers that have had their house burned down, and being able to have their go bags or car kits were a huge plus for them during those times. So if you have electricity in your house or anything that's electronic, you're susceptible to it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that is that. Um, what about organization? What would you say are some of the key tips for storage and organization? Because you get people that are in apartments or small homes. Not everybody is living in that big 4,000 square foot home
Mhm.
with a garage and a pantry that's the size of a
Right.
room.
The first thing also with organization, if you don't have your preps organized, they can become clutter and chaos. And they won't be where you would need to access them easily should the emergency arise. And then also, if they're not organized and they're just all over the place, just making a huge mess, if your significant other isn't really into prepping, it's going to tick them off. They're
Yeah.
not going to be happy with you.
Mm-mm.
So what I had to, I mean, I shifted around a couple of different ways before I actually just said, forget it. The spare bedroom is going to become the prep room because the garage didn't work. All my stuff that was in 5 gallon buckets got eaten up by rodents. So I just had to pull the trigger and say, guess what? It's going to go in the spare bedroom. Somebody, needs to come over. They can have our bedroom. We'll get out the airbed and everything will be fine. Uh, but also, what I did was, since everything is in 55-gallon barrels now, for security reasons, I have them up on an exterior wall of the house. So if something happens earthquake wise and my structure collapses, they're going to be less likely to be crushed because they're in big industrial barrels. And two, if I have to get to them and I can't get to that room, I can at least pull on that outside wall and yank everything out. So I will still have access to the things that I need. I really haven't built anything around it. So I've just got kind of a wall with barrels. It looks kind of industrial back there. If I was really worried about appearances, I'd probably build a box cabinet over them or something like that. But it's not that big of a deal for me. Um,
Right.
so but for like apartment dwellers, you're going to have to be a little more creative with how you store things and where you store things. And then you're also going to have to deal with the fact that if you're in a multi-story building, you could lose everything if in a collapse situation. So it might be a good idea if you have somebody that you have space with that they're maybe prep minded, you maybe could commingle your stuff together. Or even a storage unit, a small storage unit. I know those can get a little expensive and they can also get hot, which that can be difficult because your worst enemies for your food storage is light, heat, and moisture. So those are also things that you have to be aware of when you're preparing and where you're putting it.
Right. That makes sense. It's so hard, just finding those small spaces in your house. I've got a house, but we went from one with a lot of storage down to one where apparently my dad didn't want to put in a lot of storage when he built the home. And you have to get creative. You have to find the spaces behind the eaves that you can use, the under the bed storage, the extra closet. I mean, you just start to get really, really creative. I've seen people stack up their tubs and then put a piece of plywood over the top and make a table out of it, just because they need that much space, or stack them sideways behind a couch, between a wall and a couch. I mean, I think the website is The Apartment Prepper, and he's pretty well known in the prepping circle. He lives in an urban environment, has an apartment, and he's literally found the most unique ways of carving out space for his preps. So I always tell people, if you're in a small space, head over to his website, and he's got some really unique options.
Yeah, and the really the thing that I worry about the most with apartment dwelling is, again, multi-story, losing, the potential to, if the structure collapses, having you lose everything. That is something to think of. So you might want to think of a secondary option just in case something happens, that you're going to have something to fall back on. Right.
Yeah, no, that's great advice for sure. I'm usually one that is Lou to think a lot about bug out locations, because I am in my location. Like, that's where I want to be. In my secondary location, I have one, but it's quite a ways away, and it would be a big disaster that would lead me there. And with an apartment, it's really tough in an urban environment to find that secondary space to go to, but it becomes really important.
Right. And that's the other thing too. A lot of people, or there's a lot of preppers out there that like to talk about bugging out. And that's really you want that to be your last resort. If you've amassed preps, you want to be near them, and that's probably going to be your home. The chance, I mean, I'm 57 and I've never been in a situation where we had to bug out. Fires would be the most obvious reason that you would have to do that, but a lot of preppers like to talk about civil unrest and having to fight the government, and so it hasn't happened in my lifetime. Doesn't mean it can't.
Right. At times I wish it would, but
yeah, it's called a reset.
Yes, and Oregon desperately needs one, but I digress.
We're going to do that. We'll do that. And, Kate is telling us under beds or the back of your car, which, definitely is good advice. Again, the only thing to think about, though, is if you've got a lot of food, your car, food in your car is going to get like ruined, especially water climbs. So, so
I only throw food and water into my car kit when I'm going somewhere, like if I'm going to go camping or I'm on a road trip. I tend to just always, being a mom, I'm like a walking snack bag. So I always got snacks and stuff on me with the kids. But then for protracted trips, I throw the food kit into the car with the car kit. Right. So I always have a car kit that's seasonal. It gets swapped out twice a year. And then I've got my food kit, and that comes out and it gets tossed in the back of the car when we go on those long road trips, just in case. And then any other time, I've got my mom feed bag, where I'm prepared to feed the world out of my obnoxiously large purse now.
Yeah, so. And then Kate's also saying a Yeti style cooler with shelf-stable supplies. Yes, that works as well, but what really tolerates heat probably the best are your freeze-dried options. Yes. So a lot of Mountain House pouches and things like that will probably survive a lot better and longer in the more extreme temperatures.
Right. I usually have because I can be a budget prepper too, I'll have some of those cup of soups, the little dehydrated or dried soup things. Yeah. I have you can get them by the box. And so I'll just get a box of those and toss them in the car every winter. And I know I've got a little something, and of course the stove is in there and whatnot, but yeah.
Yeah.
That could be a whole other topic.
I still have some of those as well. I until I can get more of the next mile keto freeze dried meals actually going, or get a freeze dryer and start doing my own. The first few days of a disaster are really gonna suck. I'm gonna be sick as a dog.
You're gonna have carb overload. It's gonna be starchy carb overload.
Once, like well into a year into my keto journey, I was out with my mom and I thought, we're going to stop and have some breakfast at her favorite pancake house, which typically I'll get eggs, sausage, bacon. We're good. And I thought, let me try some pancakes it's been a while, right? 40 minutes later, I had the shakes. I had a headache. I was dizzy. I couldn't believe it. I had spiked my blood sugar so bad I thought I was going to croak.
Yeah.
So I've had to even think about this if it comes to that point where I am going to have to eat a lot of carbs and stuff, it's just going to have to be really, really small amounts until I could build up to being tolerant to, that kind of, spike again, because it's not pretty.
It's not. Really I thought I was going to die when I did it. I saw a cupcake. Somebody brought me a cupcake, one of the really big ones. I was like, yes, just dive right into it.
Ill, huh? It's bad.
Yeah, stomach pain. I had the worst stomach pain in my life. And I went to the nutritionist and I'm like, what is going on? He's like, you did what? Yeah, no wonder. Yeah. So he explained it to me in nutrition talk. And I went, oh, so cupcakes are bad? I don't know.
Yeah, you got to ease back into that. Our bodies don't, which is funny because the reverse was not true. When I started ingesting fats, my body was like, yeah, bring it on. More. Give me more. Yep. You see that plate of bacon over there? Finish it.
A plate of bacon makes everything right.
Doesn't it? I even like bacon cold now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Great.
On a BLT. Woo. With the no bread, but it's a wrap. It's lettuce. But yeah. Business. That's right there.
There we go.
So yeah, storage concerns, heat, flooding, rodents. I mean, what do you think about storing it in? How do you feel about storing all of it in like tubs in a root cellar? Do you kind of like to see people break up their supplies where maybe they can grab them and go, or keep everything together in the root cellar?
Yeah, it's one of those situations, again, depending on where you're at. So flooding, just, rising water, not so bad. I mean, you won't be able to get to it right away, but at least when the water recedes, you just have to clean off the exterior of the bag, because I vacuum seal everything. If it holds still long enough, it's in a vacuum sealer. But so you'd still be able to recover it. Flash floods, though, on the other hand, is something can pick up a car or a house and carry it away. Kiss your stuff goodbye. You're never going to get it back, unless potentially, if you do the 55-gallon barrel thing, you might be able to recover those at some point. Put your name on it or something like that. So if you go 20 miles down the road, it's like, there's my food.
Oh yeah. So
it's again dependent on your type of emergency. Earthquake wise, if everything in the basement, if the other stories collapse on it, you're not going to get it back probably for a pretty darn long time. So yeah, multiple locations, good. If you don't feel, because a lot of this you have to guess at, you don't exactly know what's going to happen. So splitting up some stuff, always a good idea. Always a good idea.
Good. I was just looking at Denise's comment. Hi, Denise. She's my prepper pal. And she has a really good tip. She comes from a hot climate. Mm-hmm. So she kind of has a good tip about how to layer your supplies in your car to help kind of keep them a little bit cooler in a hot climate. So it's definitely worth checking out and reading the comments.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just learned that I could have tapped on that comment as well, but it's so tiny on my cell phone. So should we move on to make a plan?
Yeah, let's do that, because we don't know how much longer you're going to be able to do your thing.
I know. I see the Starbucks kid moving all the garbage out, so that means they're getting close to close, and I don't know if that means they turn off the router or what, but okay. So apparently all these businesses shut down. They have like shortened hours because COVID knows that it can only spread during certain hours. So they have to close before the COVID comes out and gets them.
The virus is like, oh, damn, gotta go.
The Rona, she's always looking for you off hours. So they've got to close early before she's out prowling. She's like some sort of Stephen King thing. I don't know.
Rona on a schedule.
Rona. The fog is rolling in and she's going to get you. Okay. I'm sure I'm going to get a hard time for that one online. Maybe we don't have enough. At some point, we might have enough people that I get hate mail. We'll see. That's life goals, right? So make a plan. So that's the biggest thing. If you're starting out, I mean, you can go 100 different directions. So you've got to, like I always say to myself, Kirsten, sit down and focus. And so write, get your pen, get your paper, start writing what your biggest threat is, and then think about what you're going to do to address it. Because if you just get overwhelmed, which is probably the number one complaint I hear from preppers when they're starting out is, I just don't know where to start. It just feels like such a big task that I don't know where to begin. And they get analysis paralysis, where they think about the problem and they think and think and think, and then they stress and stress, and they're afraid they're going to make a wrong move. And I understand this because I do this landscaping and gardening all the time. I think it's so big. What if I put that plant in the wrong place? Well, okay, Kirsten, relax. You dig it up and you move it. It's not the end of the world. And so you just kind of have to take it one step at a time. And if you make a mistake, which you will, you just fix it. We'll deal with it and we'll move on to the next thing. So don't get overwhelmed. Write it down. Just keep telling yourself, how do I eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's how we're going to address with preparedness. So think about regionally. I don't really have blizzards to worry about. I don't really have super high temperatures I have to worry about. I have rain. I have idiots. I have possible flooding, wildland fires, a house fire, financial disasters. So I just know that pick one of those things and start addressing that first. And think, once you've got your regional figured out what you're going to be prepping for, then break down into basically the 6 main areas for preparedness. And you can write this down, you can come back to it later, or you can go, I'm going to send everybody to a resource here shortly that they can help make their plan a little bit more finalized. But break it down into 6 areas and just start with 3 weeks. Don't worry about a year. Don't worry about 3 years. Just start with 3 weeks. That's the beginning first step that you'll take. And yes, just go from there.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about stockpiling food for your family for a year. We'll get there.
And maybe get a whiteboard, because that's good, because you can jot down something, and if it's not going to work, just wipe it off. So
right, exactly.
Just kind of there, and you can look at it and go,
Yeah, because it's going to be a plan that has to be flexible. It's got to be a dynamic plan, because you're dealing with life. Life is dynamic. It's always changing, always evolving. There's something new coming in. You may not have as much money this month as you had next month. So just be prepared to be flexible and understand that you're not going to be one of those uber wealthy preppers that buys a compound in New Zealand that's ready to go. You got to start small and build your way up, and you're doing sustainable prepping. And that's really important. Something that you can keep up with, because you don't want to invest in all these preps and then forget about them for the next 10 years, because that's not realistic. You want to have a living preparedness pantry. You want to have this part of your lifestyle.
Right.
So
and if you are one of those super, super wealthy people, we do consultations for a fee. So please give us a call and a blank check, and we'll make sure that you are good to go for any disaster.
I'll need to do an on-site inspection in New Zealand, just saying.
Darn right.
But the vast overwhelming majority of people are just starting out, everyday people. They're single moms, they're single dads, they're trying to figure out how they can just be a little bit more prepared. So just one bite at a time, recognize those regional disasters, and then make sure you've got the 6 basic areas covered in just some capacity. And those 6 basic areas are going to be water. You've got to have water. So figure out how many people that you need water for, and just think 3 weeks. I just need 3 weeks worth of water, and start working towards getting I'm on a well. So I always think, if I lose power, how am I going to get water out of that well? Well, I have a stored amount of water first to get me through that transition.
Right.
And then there are alternative ways of getting that water out, but that's a secondary. Just get your 3 weeks worth of water. You can put it in water bottles. You can buy water bottles. I don't care what anyone says. Just buy water bottles if you have to. Get them stored, and that's your stash for the next 3 weeks, whatever your family's going to use for consuming and for hygiene. Don't forget, you got to brush your teeth, you got to clean your scrunchies, you got to take care of yourself. So include some water into that as well. So you've got your water for 3 weeks, then you start thinking about food. The easiest way to track food is just to write down what you're eating for the next 3 weeks for your family. How much beef are you consuming? Can you get freeze-dried beef as an alternative? What are some of the alternatives to protein? How much chicken? Just start writing stuff down. Before you know it, you'll have a good idea of what you need to store for 3 months of your regular meals. I missed that.
That's Gordon.
H2O.
H2O.
Hi, Gordon. H2OOP. Nice. Yes. So get your food, get your water. And then the next thing is, all that water and food is great if you can't actually cook anything. So if the power's out, it's a blizzard, it's an electrical storm, whatever has caused your power lines to go down, an idiot driver, whatever it is, you don't have any power. So make sure you have alternative power sources. I don't have propane yet, but I'm working on a propane for running a generator and for running our oven and our refrigerator. So we're working on a couple of things. The generator won't work everything, but it'll work a little bit. But we'd like to offset that with getting a propane stove. So there's little things that you can do to say, okay, what can I do? For years, actually right after the kids were born, I got a butane stove, just a one single burner that's butane and the canisters, so that I could cook inside the home. Because I can't just step out and cook if I've got 2 infants in the house. So, and you needed something that would be safe to use inside the home. So you just figure, how am I going to cook and what are my means of doing it? And then store that.
There's also a great device. It's called BioLite, and what it is, they have different types of stoves, but they have a little pack stove that's really great that I love. That it takes burn sticks and stuff in it, but it's got a thermoelectric generator on it, so it will produce electricity. Now you're not going to be able to run your refrigerator on it, but you can charge your phone. And they're a little spendy. They're on the $150, $160 side, and probably put up a link to it anyway. But it's great because your means of communication, you would be able to keep up and running.
Right. Yeah. And cook your food. Yeah, absolutely. If you need to cook inside, though, you might want to also consider about a backup method as well.
Gordon's saying I'm a big fan of canned salmon and kipper. That's my primary backup protein right now. It's a good one.
Nice.
That is a good one. Yeah, and BioLite. He said BioLite's awesome. They're great. They're phenomenal.
Nice. Yeah, they're absolutely wonderful. So yeah, your food, your power, your water, and then any kind of medical. This is where it gets really tough because, we always say, and preparedness folks say, you've got to have 3 months of your medication. Well, that's really great. Maybe you're a doctor and you can get 3 months of your blood pressure medication or your whatever your prescription is. But the rest of us little people just seem to not be able to have access to medication to that some degree. Now, some doctors in situations where maybe you're prone to natural disasters might be more open to the idea of giving a little bit extra medication, but it's really hard. And there's always some real discussions on how to handle that with your doctor. I don't know what the easy answer is. It's really tough.
My primary care, he was a nurse practitioner, unfortunately has retired, but he was also a prepper. So guess who got extra scripts to be able to sign away? But even if you have a type of condition where you can possibly take a little less of your medication, like let's say pills, for example, I have debilitating allergies that will, cough me straight up into pneumonia. When I was talking to my doctor, I was like, how long really is the shelf life on some of this stuff? And he says, well, how are you storing it? And mason jars brought out those amber jars that supposedly block a lot of UV light. I keep them in those type of mason jars and in the bottom back corner of my closet where it's cool. And he goes, indefinitely, probably.
Nice.
You're not going to have to worry about it because they don't make these pills fresh all the time. They've got to have, they've got to sit on a shelf before they get shipped out places. And that expiration date is a marketing thing. It's not the actual. And most medications, they're just going to lose a little bit of their efficacy as they expire. They're not going to kill you, with the exception of, isn't there? Wait a minute.
There is one.
I'll have to look up on that.
I have to look it up, but there is actually one that the first responders, paramedics out here educated me on, that there is one that as it starts to degrade, it actually does become detrimental to your health to continue using it. So it is recommended that it gets cycled. And they just said that because they store all their old medication, except for that one, they'll toss it, and they tossed it. So they didn't just toss it. They followed the book and destroyed it. But I wish there was there's one gentleman on my page that was a first responder, and I was hoping he would be here to chip in. But there is one.
We'll find out exactly what that is, because I'm not suggesting that you take something that's 20 years old, but I mean, if it can't hurt you, if it's just something where it's not going to work, different bag, and that's still something that you're going to want to rotate anyway.
Yeah.
Even more so than your food.
Yes, definitely. I can't think of what it is. I'll do the research and I'll post it. It's always good to look at your prescriptions or your medication or whatever that you have and look to see what is any side effects of anything that's expired. That would be important. I tend to find that, ask your pharmacist. Thank you. So the next thing, don't forget with medical that some things like tourniquets might have a life expectancy as well. So make sure that you're keeping them because they're made out of not fabric, but materials that could degrade with time, I guess, or lose some of that tensile strength, if you will. So you'll want to make sure that you're keeping. I don't throw those things away because I would rather have something than nothing.
Right.
But I do always keep certain first aid supplies in good working order and in my immediate bag. So you've got your first aid bag that you would use, that you would take anywhere, or it would be your go-to bag that you always keep stocked and you don't just steal things out of, but you keep it maintained. That bag is always squared away, and then all those extras will go elsewhere.
Yeah, and be advised, medical, you're going to have sticker shock. Medical is probably going to be your most expensive prep. But there are things that you can use, like veterinary supplies. Coban, the stretchy wrap.
Right.
It's called Vet Wrap. It's half the price. It's exactly the same stuff.
Exactly.
It's made by 3M.
Yep.
So you look at vet supplies. Some of those can be a lot cheaper.
Go to chewy.com.
Yep.
I didn't get paid for that. You're welcome, Chewy.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Those alternatives. I don't know that I'd be taking horse medication, but
Kate's saying cycle first aid supplies. Iodine gets really strong and can cause bad burns. Didn't know this.
Yeah.
Good tip.
Iodine is one of those things that you do want to watch. And
you could water it if you had some distilled water.
And like bleach, for example, that's only good for so long, as you know. So yeah. Well, I have to get really close.
It comes in pretty colors. With bleach, what I like to do, I don't store bleach. I store pool shock and mix up my own bleach. It's lighter if you have to carry it. It's not going to evaporate. It's going to last longer. I just transfer it out of the pool bags and put it into mason jars, which might. And
are you using it in your laundry or to clean as well, or
make bleach? To make a bleach solution. Yeah. And I do have an article on that, how to make pool shock into bleach. So you can carry a lot more of the pool shock granules to make bleach later, as opposed to having gallon jugs of bleach that you've got to drag around.
Yeah. I usually get crafty and buy like a small half gallon of bleach for laundry and then I forget to have it, and who cares about stains anyways, right? I forget. And so by the time I remember to use it for something, it's gone, because we're in a septic, so we don't use a lot of that type of stuff. So
Got to keep
I
those
use my
germs
hippie
healthy.
cleaners.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time I remember to use it, it's like, it smells like water again. So the next thing would be safety and security. So we're still talking about those 6 points. So the first one being water, the second being food, third being power, alternative power sources, alternative heating, alternative cooking sources, first aid and medical, and then number 5 being safety and security, making sure that you have a safe place to be during a disaster. If you're in the middle of a electrical storm, do you really want to be walking around your yard? So you want to be in a safe place, and that's the bottom line. You want to make sure that the locks are working on your door.
Oh, Gordon just chimed in a quick point, and Gordon's also watching us from YouTube. Cool.
Sweet.
I've read that potassium iodide tablets are much more stable than liquid iodine if you're seeking shelf life. Yes, definitely. And that's something that's good to have, of course, if you don't have an iodine allergy, but something that can last longer in your kit. Good
Is
point.
this for Is this what we're talking about for drinking water?
Yes, it can be,
okay.
or wound sterilization.
I wonder how many of those tablets you would need for wound care if it's just the standard, like what you would use for drinking water. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I guess it would be the same.
Can look that up as well. So we've got a couple of things on our list to look up.
Interesting. So. Thank you, Gordon. You just sent us down a rabbit hole. Okay. So safety and security, get the door locks working, keep all those things in working order. Do you have a window lock? So we've had to buy extra window locks because our tenants have got a wee one that's about 6 months younger than my kids. And her playroom is in the upstairs room, and it's a house built in the 40s. So the windows are very long and they're right off the floor. So we don't need her opening up that window and falling out. Yes, exactly. Thinking she wants to see something. So we got the little thumb locks that she can't pull off. So make sure you've got those if you need them. Any kind of little extra security measures, make sure that you've got them ahead of time. Make sure that your deadbolt is a good deadbolt that's going all the way into the door frame and not just a little bit. Do you want a glass? Unfortunately, glass doors are very popular. Ask me how I know. And they're not always the safest, the most secure for your home. So maybe that's something to think about in the future as well. And then evacuation plan would be number 6. You've got to get an evacuation plan. I would say that's almost the first thing that you should do when you start prepping, so that if anything happens, you're already set up. Because we saw, was it last year, the year before? I think it was the year before, when the wildfires got really bad in California. There was one town where there's literally just one way into town and one way out. And that made evacuation in the middle of that wildfire really, really difficult. And we saw pictures of people literally driving through flames to try to get out of town. And you can only do so much. You know, there's only so much you can do in that situation. But if you're organized and you got your preps and your evacuation plan in place, you're spending 15 minutes or 5 minutes getting your stuff together and hitting the road, whereas everybody else is spending an hour or so, or 20 minutes, and they're getting out. So just think about being prepared early, having that plan and knowing what they are. If you can get alternate routes, please do that. I wouldn't personally want to live in a place where there's one way in and one way out. So think about that evacuation plan, where you're going to go, have more than one, and then create a checklist. We have on the blog right now a download from ready.gov, and people can slam the feds all they want, but when it comes to certain preparedness items and checklists, they've done actually a pretty good job of it. And I don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel, but go download it. And used to be able to get them to send you the booklet, but with the Rona, it's kind of hard now. They're not printing that stuff out, or there's nobody to mail them out. So you just download it, print it out, and go through the checklist. Keep a checklist on a board or on a sheet somewhere that you can easily access it, where everybody in the family has a role to play. He goes and gets this and loads it up. You go get this. The kids go get that. Everybody's got a role. Even a 5-year-old can go in their room, grab their little bag, grab their lovey or their little stuffy, whatever it is, and head to the car.
Mm-hmm.
That's their job, while mom and dad do X, Y, and Z. So you just train them, get them done, get that checklist. Everybody knows what their role is. You've got your pertinent paperwork. Any kind of phone numbers for schools should be on it in case your kids are at school and you need to call them and find out what the disaster plan is for your school, the hospital, phone numbers for poison control. Everything should be right there in your disaster preparedness plan where everybody can see it. So,
and also at the end of this, there will be a closing card out, and it'll have the website down for the blog. It'll be at the bottom of the banner there, so you can go to that web address and download that.
Right.
Definitely.
FEMA doc. Yes, it's worth it. I mean, I remember when I first started getting onto Survival Betty, I think I posted the ready.gov thing and people are like, FEMA, the government. Blah. And I thought, you know what, if it's a free resource and it's worth it, just download it. Scribble out the stuff you don't like. You don't have to agree with it, but they've done a pretty good job of putting all this information in one place for people. The only thing they do is they fall short when they say you need 3 weeks. Because where I live, it isn't 3 weeks. If we're looking at my big long-term disaster that we're faced with is Cascadia, which is a 10 plus mega earthquake that isn't if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And if it happens in our lifetime, we're looking at not 3 months out of services, we're looking at up to a year out of services because our area is woefully underprepared. So and
the type of thing that Cascadia will be, it's not even that we're so woefully underprepared, which that type of devastation, I don't know what you could do to prepare for it, because we have so many bridges and connecting things and over waterways and stuff. It's going to be cut off central. Those big rigs that get goods and supplies to us aren't going to make it.
No, it's going to be brought into some areas by helicopter or through a municipal airport. That's only after the airport's been deemed safe to be used. And then we have the issue of liquefaction. If you don't know what liquefaction is, folks, just go out to a beach that's had the tide come in and the sand is wet. Put your hand on the sand and jiggle it until your hand goes down into the sand and your hand has disappeared underneath the sand. That's a small example of what liquefaction is on a really large scale. With a 10 magnitude earthquake, it's going to jiggle all these soft land pockets that we have, and houses are going to go away and buildings are going to become unstable. So liquefaction, there is a map actually here in the Pacific Northwest that will highlight some of the known areas that are prone to liquefaction. So you can see kind of where
I've looked.
I should put up a link.
Please.
There's one. I found it. It was.
I called the U of O to talk to their geology folks. Nothing.
That's because you called the U of O. Maybe OSU would be the better one to call because of their seismic center. But yeah,
all the ducks are going to get upset with you.
Well, they'll get over it. They can beat us again at Civil War. That's all right. But yeah, the liquefaction is probably what worries me more. And my husband works like 45 minutes away, and he's got to cross like 3 bridges to get back and forth. So it'll be like 3 months before we see him again if it happens and he's at work. He's gonna have to hunker down at work. But yeah, it's that's a serious concern. Yeah, or a walk. So that's the biggest deal. Should we talk about what is a reasonable time frame for people to think about preparing in increments?
Yeah, like you touched on earlier, start with 3 weeks. You're going to build from there. My whole thing is my minimum, even when I was starting out, was 6 months. I kind of gave myself a big window there. But 3 weeks, yeah, that's a good place to start. But you're going to want to build up from there. If you look at things that had already happened, like Katrina, it was a heck of a lot longer than the 3 weeks. So start with the 3, think about 6, eventually a year. I figure if you plan for a year out and things still haven't sorted themselves out yet, like let's say if Cascadia happens to us, after a year, you're going to want to be producing your own food, growing. even along the way, probably even at 6 months, I would start growing my own food. And also making sure that, any type of seeds or anything like that you get, make sure they're heirloom seeds so you can, harvest the seeds for the next planting out of them, because there is a type of seed, they call them Terminator seeds, that you're not going to get another crop out of them. It's like they're one and done. Is there an actual term for that? Hybrids?
Yeah, they're hybrids. They've just been, bred to either be sterile and not producible in the same way, or they're like a Bocking variety of Russian comfrey would be a good example of that. It produces all the beautiful flower heads, but it can't grow from seed. Amazing. Yeah, they're usually a hybrid, or they don't reproduce quite the same. So. Yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing, learning how to do seed saving, things like that. That's stuff that you want to keep maybe in the back of your head for not even really a hobby, but a novelty per se. I mean, I don't know. Do you do saving? Or do you
I do a little bit. So I do just enough to kind of keep, I observe rules about planting distances best as I can. I try to only grow certain varieties at certain times of the year. I alternate through them. I do buy fresh seed every year because I would prefer to do that and have fresh seed. But I practice my seed saving skills because it's hard. It's understanding you can't just grab a tomato and then just wash off the seeds and think that it's going to work the next year. You've got to understand how to ferment them, and some things need stratification. So it's understanding how to grow. It's something that I kind of chuckle when people go, well, I have my seed bank and I have it for an emergency and it sits on my shelf and I don't garden.
Yeah, no, forget it.
Good luck.
Yeah.
There's a reason why a lot of our ancestors starved to death, because it's hard to feed yourself from your own garden. So
those are people that are used to doing it. That's why I chuckle when people say, "Oh yeah, I'll just go out in the woods and I'll hunt and I'll be fine." It's like, you don't understand. There was a period that they called it the starving time, and these are people that hunted and grew stuff and died.
Yeah. I have friends that their tags are left unfilled and they're skilled hunters. These are the times that we live in. We're competing for resources with each other and with wildlife. So
definitely.
That's the wolf and the bear gets right away sometimes because they're better at it.
Yeah. So basically, how long?
So you think me start with a 3 month, 6 month?
I start with 3 weeks, but make sure that you've got an earmark that would go up to a year. So whatever you're comfortable with building on, because the speed with which you collect or amass things, it's going to be different for everybody. It's going to depend on your financial situation, how much space you've got, things like that. Just know that start small, but have some type of goal towards the end that you want to look at. And for me, I would say that's, it's 3 weeks, 6 months, 1 year. Those would be my jumping points. It's called hunting, not shopping.
I love that. I had to practice doing that with the phone. Literally, the text is tiny, so I had to throw that up there. It was a great comment by Kate.
Okay, and
I hope that Kate chips in on this one, because I think she's going to have some really good input on this next topic, which is not just prepping for us, but if you've got pets, animals, livestock, whatever, geckos, whatever you have, make sure you prep for them, because they're reliant, they're domesticated to some degree, and they're going to be reliant on you to feed and care for them. So when you're putting together your emergency plan, please don't forget to prep enough food for them. If they're your pets, make sure you've got their kennels, their crates, their leashes. My dog has a coat in the cold weather because he's a Shih Tzu. He's like somebody's little RV dog that I adopted, and he's not rugged. The idea that he ever evolved from a wolf is laughable. He more likely evolved from a domesticated bunny or something. He's sweet. He's the best little guy. So you've got to prep for him. He couldn't even eat a wild animal if he tried. He would probably try, but I've got to have food for him. So you got to have their food. You got to have their medication. He has got crazy Shih Tzu hair, and it tangles and mats. So I make sure that I always keep a little pair of scissors that I can trim him up, because it will grow into his eyes. His feet will get matted. So make sure that you care for your personal pets just as well. But make sure that you've prepared a little go bag for them. Whether it's a backpack, it's a tub, whatever it is, it's got their medication, their first aid supplies, their extra food.
Keep them, entertained if you're like having to set up any type of camping area, whatever,
right?
Something to keep them occupied.
Right. A lead line for them, some sort of a leash where they're not out running around, that they can be controlled. I've got one that just pounds right into the ground. It's kind of like a corkscrewed post or whatever that you just put into the ground, and it helps to secure them, just to keep them safe and out of the way. But prep for them. Same thing with livestock, and whether you've got cattle, you've got horses, you've got sheep. I hope that if you have those kinds of animals, that you have a way to trailer them. I kind of cringe a little bit when people get these big hobby farms and they kind of joke about how they just throw the sheep in the back of the Subaru as they head back from the auction. That's really great as a short-term supply or short-term option. But what if there's an emergency? How are you going to get them out of there? So, if you don't have a truck with side rails on it, if you don't have a flatbed trailer that you can put sides on, you got to be thinking about how you're going to evacuate these animals. I know a lot of folks during wildfires will just, it's kind of tough. Cows and donkeys and mules and horses will run and take care of themselves for the most part, as long as there's an out. But a lot of folks will trailer them, especially if they've invested an awful lot of money in them. They'll have a plan for them, but I kind of feel like everybody needs to have a plan for their animals no matter what. So some folks will spray paint their phone number or their driver's license number on the side of the animal. That's an option. They'll use nail polish on the hooves of horses. That's another thing that we'll look for in as a first responder. So those are options. But what's Kate saying?
Kate's saying is livestock feed that lasts. Pelleted feed loses nutrition over time.
Excellent point.
Did not know.
Excellent point. Jump trailer. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So just have a plan. If you've got goats, a dump trailer, like Kate just said, such a great way to haul them up there. But here's the caveat. Whatever you've got that you need to throw into a horse trailer or some sort of not a travel trailer. I guess you could throw them in your travel trailer if you want, but it'd be like the funny farm. But whatever you're going to do, they need to know how to load. So it's not as easy as just buying a horse. The horse people know this, animal people know this. You have to teach them to trailer, and they're not always the easiest. So if they're not used to trailering, you got to start working on them. Oh yeah, so what is that? Chaff hay, for example. Yeah. So getting them trailered and having a plan. Same thing with your chooks. You got to get your chickens all geared up. If you're having an emergency and your animals are always free range, you are not ever going to catch your chickens unless you have a plan. I trained my chickens with little mealworms, and I would call them. So I would say, here, chickie, chickie, and I would rattle those mealworms, and they would come. And I always did it inside the coop because the coop run is a lot smaller. Call them into the coop, close up the coop, where I have already an extra large dog kennel. And then just one by one, I start tossing them in the dog kennel. And then I can take them out with that dog kennel loaded in the back of the truck or the trailer and take off, and my chickens are okay.
Yep, good point. Like Kate says, practice.
Yeah, gotta practice. So sometimes you may need to make some sort of a decision. You may only get your house cat and your house dog out of there, and you may be kicking open gates and fences and throwing open coops and running for the hills. Some folks literally have minutes to evacuate. In the case of a wildfire, we saw folks that were killed in their driveway just trying to get out. So some of these things can happen so fast. They strike in the middle of the early morning hours and there's no time to prepare. So be as prepared as you can, I guess, is the bottom line. Being prepared would be, when we talk about an evacuation plan, and fires are just extremely terrifying to me because we live in fire country, making sure that you've got those fire zones around your house would be part of the preparedness plan.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. California, talk about hot and dry, and then the Santa Ana winds kick up. You want to know how fast a fire can spread?
Yeah, that's when we saw some. Yeah, we saw some people burned in their driveways.
Yeah,
so not able to get out. So can you feed your pets and livestock for a protracted amount of time? You can't just grow a bunch of corn and throw it at your chickens. You've got to have a very orchestrated approach to feed ratios, or you're going to end up with fatty liver disease or colic or a whole wealth of things. So make sure you can. Yes. So you got to make sure you can feed them for a protracted amount of time. You know, things like a house fire or wildfire, people are amazing, and we'll see folks, you know, miles away that have barns that they'll say, come and you know, if you've got animals, come out here and we'll help you. But think about protracted time frames and how you're going to feed those animals. Medication and supplements available for them. The first aid solutions should all be in a kit somewhere where it's just an easy tub and you can throw it in the front of the trailer or in the vehicle. Yeah, so that's kind of my gist of that, is just don't forget them.
Yeah, definitely. And then plant fodder for green compost. Another good point, Kate.
Yeah. So, depending on the animal, some chickens really like comfrey. That Bocking variety of comfrey that we're talking about is great for compost tea, and it makes excellent fodder for chickens as well. So easy to grow.
Definitely. Yeah. So we are at 1 hour. I think we should probably not push this too much because of where you're at there, Kirsten.
We did so good.
Yeah, I'm impressed. So
it's the mojo of the vehicle.
The truck rant. So okay. Well, again, we're going to have a card up at the end that will show you the web address for the blog post. We do thank you for being here and all the questions that were great. It really love it when you can get in there and interact with us. It's really fun. It's helpful. We appreciate it, and it's sharing with other people that things that we might not have thought of that you kind of chimed in there and helped out with. We do appreciate. So until next time, please take care, be safe. And please, please, please be prepared.
Bye.